This application ultimately comes down to a balance between the benefits of the proposal and the harm that would be caused. Weighing in favour of the proposal are the significant number of homes proposed and the provision of significant levels of affordable housing and the specialist housing such as the gypsy and traveller pitches. The potential delivery of schools, including a secondary school, as well as new employment and retail provisions, also weigh in favour of a grant of planning permission, as do the improved recreational facilities, including some 50 hectares of sands and public open space. The development would also deliver economic benefits both during construction and post-completion. Weighing against the development are the harm to the greenbelt and the impacts on openness, potential harm to the highway network, harm to the character of the area and the setting of a listed building, the loss of agricultural land and the potential waste site, and the potential impact on the SPA. The report before you concludes that the benefits of the proposal do not clearly outweigh the harm that would be caused and do not amount to very special circumstances necessary to justify a grant of planning permission. While a number of these issues may be capable of resolution in the future, there is no certainty of this, and the application must be determined on its merits at the time that it is to be decided. Accordingly, the recommendation is to refuse the applications for the reasons set out in section 2 of your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a very comprehensive presentation. Can I call Carolyn Force now, our legal advisor, just wants to have a word with us?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just to really for a point of clarity for the benefit of members making the decision today that the Highways England response, which has been given pursuant to the Highways England licence, they have made it clear that it is a recommendation that planning permission not be granted. There is a further section referring to a specified period of time. In the interest of absolute clarity, Highways England no longer have holding powers. This is only a matter for the Secretary of State by issuing a holding direction. In circumstances where the committee were considering proposing to determine an application not in accordance with a recommendation, then there would have to be a referral to the Secretary of State, meaning that if members were minded to approve the application this evening, the decision couldn't be made at this point. The matter would have to be referred to the Secretary of State. But for the purpose of this evening, this recommendation, this clear recommendation from Highways England, is that planning permission not be granted. The issue about the time is simply because Highways England at this point say, for want of evidence, from a strategic road network perspective, they are unable to say one way or the other whether this would be acceptable, meaning that 6-month period would allow a breathing space for any necessary negotiations in the event that the application were refused and the applicant appealed.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to our public speakers then. And firstly, can I call Mr Tim Harrell, please, who is Chairman of Guildford and Surrey Campaign for Rural England, and he wishes to object.
I'm speaking today as Chairman of CPRE Surrey, Guildford District. I was born in Ockham and lived in Effingham for 30 years. My home is now in Guildford. At last, this application has come to this moment of decision after over 15 months have been spent trying to find ways to get round the many unresolvable grounds of objection to this site and proposal. Refusing this application should no longer be delayed or deferred, nor should it be brought forward to resurface at the next stage of the local plan consultation. It is to the credit of the Guildford Borough Council officers concerned that the issues at stake have been clarified as much as they have after so much time and effort. We consider that this application can be rejected on prematurity as well as on planning grounds, since so many points of objection remain unresolved and inadequately answered. Ockham is part of Guildford's Greenbelt heritage. It is a historic village which would be overwhelmed by the development proposed. Its conservation area and protected buildings would be wholly undermined by traffic growth. Its high-quality agricultural land will be sacrificed, its countryside setting, historic character, and environmental quality destroyed. Those of you who have visited the site will be under no illusion that such a major development involving unacceptably high-density buildings of up to 5 stories represents inappropriate development of an urban character in the Green Belt, which is both harmful to its openness and an encroachment into countryside that should be protected. Development of this type in this location will be highly intrusive because of its height, mass and size. It will be out of character with Ockham Village and a source of light, noise and air pollution in this relatively remote location. Whether it is visible from the Surrey Hills Airbnb is a matter of personal judgment. It seems to me that this is likely to be the case and therefore undesirable and harmful. The proposal for a car-dependent community is not just a matter of local concern. Access to the M25, the A3 and the adjoining road network shows clearly that the development is unsustainable and that there is no way that this can be resolved. This will become even more apparent when the Royal Horticultural Gardens at Wisley announce their expansion proposals in the following weeks. Current policies in the existing local plan and nationally make it clear that high-density development of the green belt countryside in this way does not meet the very special circumstances test. Nor do we believe that this development could justify a green belt boundary change for exceptional circumstances at the time of the forthcoming local plan review because of its wide range of inadequacies. CPRE urges you to...
Mr Harold, I'll have to stop you. Your 3 minutes goes very quickly, but thank you. You made your point extremely well.
Thank you.
Can I call Mrs Helen Jeffries, please? Mrs Helen Jeffries from Wisley Action Group who wishes to object.
Over 2,000 residents, neighbouring local authorities and both East and West Horsley Parish Councils agree with the officer's view that there are sound reasons to reject this proposal on transport grounds. WAG's analysis shows that almost 55,000 cars have somehow disappeared from the road in the applicant's peak hour transport assessment without any justification, and that does not include any traffic for the recently proposed secondary school. The impact of the proposal on Rickley High Street is unthinkable, and the proposed mitigation of local roads closures will increase traffic flow, in particular in East and West Horsley, as well as forcing vehicles through the site itself. This is nonsense, to say nothing of how the highways authorities will view this complication with the RHS plans for an additional 500,000 annual visitors. Many borough residents and others from further afield commute to London on the A3. The regular jams in the rush hour are a daily occurrence. Worryingly, the traffic queues northbound throughout the day. The plans for Junction 10 may alleviate the situation, but the southwest quadrant of the M25 is yet to be resolved, and the problems at Paynes Hill, just north of the site, despite being in Elmbridge, are another critical issue. Many of you have visited the site and were no doubt surprised that local roads cannot accommodate passing HGVs without stopping. Being run off the road by an HGV is a regular event. Locals cannot imagine that it is feasible to walk or cycle to work along the narrow, unlit roads with no pavements. It would be dangerous to propose that residents walk to the station or to off-site schools. This then takes us back to public transport, which cannot be delivered with the number of buses suggested due to the proposed frequency being unrealistic. So residents will use private cars, adding to already unacceptable congestion at station car parks, local road junctions and on the A3. The fact that after a year of trying the applicant has still been unable to provide the information required to Highways England should provide you with a clue. The SPA is another insoluble problem. The mitigation proposed deals solely with the leisure impact of the development. The placing of part of the Sang adjacent to the SPA actually draws people towards rather than away from the protected site. We do not
30
agree that
seconds.
1.5 wardens will protect the site 24/7 from predatory pets and users of full public rights of way. Many locals believe that traffic and transport is an insoluble problem. The proposal is unsustainable on many fronts and, as everyone here agrees, must be refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping to time. Can I call Mr. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't put the banners down, I will ask you to leave. It's for health and safety reasons. Can I call Mr. Tony Edwards, please? Can I ask members to act civilly during this meeting, please, and respectfully listen to everybody? And I don't want to see banners again. I will ask you to leave. That's the final warning.
The Nationwide Building Society announced on Friday that the average house price in southern England had smashed through the £300,000 ceiling. Incredibly, £300,000 will also be the price of a so-called affordable home in this proposed Greenbelt development in Ockham. Agents for the Cayman Islands applicant have confirmed to Ockham Parish Council that up to 800 quotes affordable units, or 40% of the total, would be in the £250,000 bracket after a 20% government subsidy on a market price around £300,000. But this curious concept of affordable housing with prices well over £250,000 is one of many elements of whimsy to be found in the application. A pint-sized street survey of just 287 people somehow proved to us that 65% of 18 to 35-year-olds were in favour of this development, with less than 20% against. The applicant reinforced this fragile message of overwhelming public approval with a second survey, this time on the telephone among people living, they said, within 7 miles of Guildford Centre. This apparently proved that 46% of 1,002 questioned supported the plan with less than a third against. More than a hint of whimsy, because Wisley and Ockham are not 7 but 11 miles from the centre of the town, and so residents adjacent to the proposed scheme were not consulted at all, a fundamental omission which would obviously skew the results. For a more reliable view of public opinion, however, we did not look no further than Guildford Borough Council's own portal, which records over 2,000 formal objections to this scheme, with just 7 in favour. It's clear that if 65% of 18 to 35-year-olds have given their views, they'll obviously be found in the avalanche of objections to the proposal, not in approval. But like Tinkerbell Stardust, further elements of whimsy are sprinkled liberally across this application in its supporting literature. The applicant recently emailed councillors claiming that there is consented access to the A3 via the Ockham interchange. There isn't. This planning consent exists for a composting facility and is for 36 limited truck movements a day to and from the waste site, nothing more. Surrey County Council has confirmed that 17 hectares of the application site is already allocated for waste, and approval of the cards application for a new town would, and I quote, prejudice the successful implementation of the Surrey Waste Plan. Demonstrating yet more whimsy, the applicant describes three farm meadows
30 seconds.
3 as lowest grade 4, when, as advertised by Knight Frank just 2 years ago, the majority of the land is grade 3 prime agricultural land and remains a productive farming entity. That's no place for a new town, not now and not in the next local plan.
Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping to time. Can I call Mr. Malcolm H, please, who also wishes to object?
Assessments of air quality, both by the applicant and by the Council's expert, are flawed. The SPA and the site are in breach of regulation and the situation is deteriorating. Measurements reported are ignored and are confusingly presented in a way which has seemingly persuaded the Council not to undertake their duty to carry out an appropriate assessment. Certainly it is technical, but the mathematics really are very simple. The regulatory limit, the critical load for oxides of nitrogen on the SPA, is 30 micrograms per cubic metre. It is strange that the results in Table 6.9 showing exceedances of this objective have not been taken into account, and this, coupled with an unsound transport assessment, means that both the air quality and ecology assessments are unreliable. For the Habitats Regulation Assessment, it is established that changes in nitrogen and NOx concentrations would be a likely significant event upon the SPA, so the Council should get an appropriate assessment. This report from the applicant should never have been accepted. The somewhat cavalier approach seems to suggest that as the site is already highly polluted, further pollution is of no consequence. But there remains an obligation to reduce the pollution on the SPA. The reports are flawed as they ignore the data which show a significant damaging impact on the heathlands of the SPA, a concern shared by the RSPB but inexplicably not Natural England. The officer's report recommends updating site-specific data over 3 months, but much more would be necessary. Nitrogen oxides and particulates are all potentially harmful to biodiversity and to human health, where the limit of 40 micrograms per cubic metre is higher than the 30 for plants. Even at the limits, it would not be safe. The effect of vehicle movements and emissions and predicted changes should be taken into account, alongside estimates of the deposition of nitrous and nitric acid, which are formed when the oxides dissolve in rainwater. Recent publicity has drawn attention to the serious effects on the lungs, particularly for young people, of being exposed to poor air quality over a long period. These adverse effects are not capable of mitigation. Air quality should most certainly be included in the reasons for deferral.
30 seconds.
Urban development of the proposed new town has no place in the rural character environment of Ockham. The neighbouring hamlets of Elm Corner, Bridge End and Martyrs Green will be swamped and destroyed. In the words of leading council, this new town is the wrong project in the wrong place.
Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping the time. Can I call Mr. Charles Collins, please? Mr. Collins is the agent for the applicant.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Charles Collins, Chartered Town Planner. I've represented the applicant Wisley Property Investments since 2013. I'm asking you today to defer the determination of the application. Any application for a sustainable new settlement of this size has many complicated aspects and takes time to get right. For example, other similar sized schemes have taken up to 2 years to determine, such as Aldershot Oval Extension in Runnymede and Deep Cut Barracks in Surrey Heath. The vast majority of the recommended reasons for refusal are resolvable within a reasonable time frame. A deferral would allow us to continue to work with the Council to address the outstanding concerns. A tremendous amount of work and effort by an award-winning design team has gone into the proposal. Considerable investment is proposed by my clients to fund the reuse of previously developed land. I hope you have seen in the member update that we provide ahead of this committee meeting responding to the various officers' recommendations. To reiterate, the proposal incorporates up to 2,068 dwellings, including up to 800 affordable homes, more than that delivered over the past 10 years in this borough, an extensive parking area, which means that less than half the site will be developed, an excellent range of uses, shops, an on-site primary school, an on-site secondary school, nursery provision, healthcare, employment and community facilities. In perpetuity bus provision, enabling regular 10-minute connections to nearby railway stations and services. The proposal meets the criteria of being a garden village, as it is a new settlement of over 1,500 dwellings, built on redundant land but is well positioned on the A3 and M25. We have worked alongside our officers to bring forward the proposals in direct response to the emerging local plan, which includes Wisley as an emerging allocation for a new settlement. This is in order to demonstrate housing delivery and tackle key issues, notably transport mitigation and the Thames Basin Heath SPA. The application before you attracts no objection from Natural England, the government's advised on SPA matters. It's also brought before you in a period where we have agreed transport modelling with Surrey County Council and substantial progress has been made with Highways England, who in our opinion are suggesting that the application should be deferred. We are confident that the outstanding high-risk matters can be resolved over the next few months. My client makes this commitment tonight to work with the Council to progress the Section 106 agreement to ensure that the necessary infrastructure provision can be provided to benefit the site and the surrounds. In respect to the green belt, this is rightly a sensitive issue. The Borough is presently making decisions over its final draft local plan. A new settlement of Wisley is proposed by officers as a key allocation to enable the delivery of new homes, and hence to be removed from the green belt. The NPPF requires the Council does what it can to meet the identified housing needs, which now stand at over 693 homes per annum. A decision on the proposal tonight has to be made against the backdrop of the existing out-of-date local plan. The committee has the power to defer the application. A deferral would, in these circumstances, be appropriate, as it would enable further consideration of the proposal once the Council has decided on its final draft local plan. My client is willing to agree to the appropriate extension of time to enable this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 1 second left. Can I now call Mr. Julian Seymour, please, who wishes to support the application?
Mrs Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for giving me time to speak tonight. I'm Julian Seymour and I've been providing communication support for the project since early 2014. I'm speaking on behalf of the landowners. Local businesses cite the housing crisis as one of the biggest challenges they face, causing difficulty in hiring and keeping staff. Guildford house prices have now reached 14 times average incomes. Your council acknowledges that 693 new homes are needed every year to address the crisis. However, delivery has been nowhere near that, with an average of just 260 homes delivered every year for the last 5 years. To almost triple this figure and to catch up with under-delivery will be difficult. A strategic brownfield site like Wisley Airfield, which can deliver housing in the short term together with all community facilities for daily life, is the obvious answer. With 800 affordable homes, that's a full 40%, Wisley Airfield provides the opportunity for home ownership in the borough for the many, not just the lucky few. You will have seen the scale of the airfield on your recent site visit. It contains some 47 acres of runway, hard-standing and tracks, making it the biggest piece of brownfield land in Guildford area Greenbelt. We can deliver a sustainable community...
Excuse me, Mr. Seymour. Everybody listens to the other speakers respectfully. Can you please keep quiet when we have speakers? Thank you.
We can deliver a sustainable community of up to 2,000 homes and a 60-bed care home. That's a substantial portion of Guildford's housing need, along with community facilities including a primary school, a secondary school, nursery provision, shops, a cafe, sports pitches, community hall and healthcare facility. Spreading these 2,000 homes across, say, 10 or more smaller developments of 100 to 200 houses in villages across the borough could not deliver this level of infrastructure. The airfield is also well connected. It has direct consented access to the A3 and is in easy cycling distance of Effingham Junction Station. Our proposals include in perpetuity funding for frequent bus services to stations and other points of interest starting from the time the first house is occupied. We've expanded the school provision as a result of the consultation. The school will serve 5 to 16-year-olds from the airfield and local area, bringing extra capacity to the borough. Parkland also makes up almost half the site. That means it's bigger than Stoke Park and will be accessible to everyone. It features a series of circular walks, a car park and a cafe, as well as new landscape features. Neighbours are understandably nervous about change. However, this should be weighed against the benefits of the site, the depth of the housing crisis, the desire for new homes across the borough. We've commissioned an independent telephone survey of 1,000 residents across the whole borough,
30 seconds.
which were found that 62% of those surveyed were in support of the scheme or were neutral. 75% of younger people, often underrepresented in consultation, were in favour. This same group finding it hardest to get onto the housing ladder. We're nearly but not quite there, and a little more time is needed to resolve the few outstanding issues. We therefore hope you will resolve to defer the application to a future committee to allow more time for the outstanding matters to be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping to time. Before I call the local ward member for Lovelace, I'd like to advise the committee that, as I've already stated, this is a major application. Accordingly, I have again used my discretion as chairman to allow Councillor Cross to have up to 8 minutes to introduce the item. I hope the committee is in agreement with my decision. Of course, the usual rules will apply for other members who may wish to speak. Secondly, before I call Councillor Cross, can I remind members that what we're considering here tonight is an outline proposal and we're looking at access only. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, the speakers and Mr Sherman for his fine report. Our National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, is a planning bible for people and councils to produce local and neighbourhood plans and a de facto rule book. The edited NPPF rules, I will quote, are for this committee to judge how they align or not with this application. I have added some minimal commentary as most members are familiar with the site. The numbers quoted are actually the NPPF paragraphs. 10. Plans and decisions must take account of local circumstances and respond to different opportunities for achieving sustainable development. 14. At the heart of the NPPF is a presumption in favour of sustainable development, unless any adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, or specific NPPF policies state development should be restricted, i.e. relating to sites protected by Birds and Habitats Directive, SSSIs, or the Green Belt. Paragraph 19 states the presumption in favour will not then apply. 17. Core principle planning issues. Always seek high quality design. Take account of the character of areas. Protect the green belt. Recognise the character and beauty of the countryside. Conserve and enhance the natural environment and reduce pollution. Conserve heritage assets. Actively manage growth, making full use of public transport, walking and cycling, and focus all development in locations which are or can be made sustainable. 26-27. When assessing applications, including retail, leisure and office development outside of town centres, local planning authorities, LPAs, require an impact assessment for existing local retail centres of up to 10 years. If an application fails this test, or it will have an adverse impact, it should be refused. 30. LPAs should seek to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and congestion and support development with sustainable modes of transport. 32. Plans and decisions should check if transport improvements can be made to limit the significant impacts. Developments can only be refused on transport grounds where impacts are severe. Mr Sherman quotes from Highways England, Surrey County Council and GBC, the proposed developments may result in severe harm to the A3. 2. We are awaiting further critical evidence to demonstrate that the development will not have a severe impact on the A3 M25. 3. Additional traffic cannot be mitigated at the Ripley crossroads without leading to severe impact. And Guildford's own conclusions state these impacts are potentially severe. 34. Ensuring developments will ensure that significant traffic are where travel is minimised and sustainable transport is maximised. Do we see this? 35. Plans should exploit sustainable transport modes. Development should be located and designed to give priority to pedestrian and cycle movements, access high-quality public transport and create safe layouts, minimising conflicts with vehicles, cyclists and pedestrians. 55. To promote the sustainable development, housing should be located where it will enhance or maintain the vitality of rural communities. LPAs should avoid building new isolated homes in the countryside. Really? 58. Policies and decisions should ensure that developments function well and add to the overall quality of the area, creating attractive places to live, responding to the local character and history, create safe crime-free environments and are attractive with good architecture and landscaping. 61 to 75. Policies and decisions should connect people and places and integrate new development into the natural and historic environment. They should protect and enhance public rights of way and access. Not so. Footpaths will here become urban alleys. 79. The essential characteristics of the green belt are their openness, permanence and their safeguarding of the countryside from encroachment. 81. Local planning authorities should plan the beneficial use of the green belt to retain and enhance landscapes, visual amenity and biodiversity. enhance the landscape. 87. Inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the greenbelt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. Housing need is not enough. 89. Local plans authorities should regard new construction as inappropriate in the greenbelt. The only exception is infilling or redevelopment of previously developed sites, which would not have a greater impact on the openness of the greenbelt than the existing development. That clearly says no new development here then. 112. Where development of agricultural land is planned, LPAs should use areas of poorer quality land, are we? 131. LPAs should consider the desirability of a new development making a positive contribution to the local character and distinctiveness. Does this? 212 to 215. NPPF policies are material considerations which LPAs must take into account. Due weight should be given to the relevant policies in the local plans according to their degree of consistency with the NPPF. Taking these 22 NPPF policies as a whole, I have serious difficulty in finding any significant adherence to them in this application, and I am convinced many are blatantly ignored. This site also represents the antithesis of sustainability, and I personally do not wish to be remembered for helping turn a rural pasture into an urban ghetto with 5-storey blocks scattered across its entirety. I therefore move to support the officer's recommendation to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to try and conduct this meeting, please. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Furness, would you like to speak now and reserve your rights?
I'll speak now, if I may, please, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very happy to second this, Councillor Cross's motion for refusal of this application. I do want to give my praise as well to the team. I think this has been an extremely long-running and complex application, so I have to say your stammer in dealing with all of the documents and everything else is quite a credit. Personally, in my role as infrastructure and transport lead member on this council, I do have serious concerns, particularly relating to those two aspects. And I am delighted to see that reasons for refusal 3 and 4, as set out on page 10, really do cover the amount of concern and the lack of information that has so far been submitted regarding the strategic and local road network, as well as the sustainability measures of transport. Those are the particular concerns, and in relation to the access. I do also have a lot of concern that we are still waiting on methods to justify the air quality and that lack of information there. That is of concern around the borough. It is one that I am looking into quite personally with a number of my colleagues. There was just one point that I did want to make from one of the speakers in support, and I'm afraid businesses' comments, housing is not first, it is congestion and transport, which is one of the main reasons why businesses are commenting and saying that is the main reason that they are struggling to get people in and out. We do have strategic problems in Guildford. We have a Guildford Borough Transport strategy that is about to be published in the next couple of weeks. Infrastructure and transport are key parts of the upcoming local plan and what we actually have to deal with the existing problems as well as supporting the future. So I am delighted to support all 14 reasons for refusal on this application, and I urge all committee members to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wicks. Councillor Wicks.
Thank you very much. The officer's report deals at some length with the many reasons why we should reject this application. The development is inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, and the applicant is not showing very special circumstances. But I'd like to talk about sustainability. You've already heard quite a lot about it. The applicant estimates that approximately 182 full-time equivalent jobs will be supported by the proposed employment uses on this site, while Surrey County Council quotes a figure of 368 jobs, including community and retail uses. With a little over 2,000 homes proposed, it's likely that there are going to be, say, 3,500 people in employment living on the development.
which means that roughly 3,000 of them will be working elsewhere and making journeys to their place of employment. A large number of these journeys would be made by car, because walking and cycling in an area with narrow country roads, no street lighting and no pavements are unrealistic. Some residents might use the proposed bus service to Effingham Junction or Horsley stations, but the majority are likely to use the car. You can add to these numbers people with primary school and secondary school children, since there wouldn't be a primary school on site until several years after the development was started, and a secondary school even later, or possibly not at all. So school journeys have to be added to employment journeys. Surrey County Council and Highways England can't agree to the approval of this application because of its effects on the strategic and local road network. But I have to ask, is this a sustainable site at all for a major housing development? It's isolated from existing public transport, and there are questions about the long-term viability of additional bus services. It's impossible to envisage any quantity of walking or cycling to access any facilities outside the site, and therefore the developer would be creating a sizable community almost entirely dependent on the car, in an area where neither the strategic road network nor the local road network can cope with the additional traffic. And the suggestions that are made to mitigate some of the effects on the local road network, for example, restricting access to Rose Lane, an important area in Ripley, and making some other lanes
30 seconds.
Thank you. One way would have a big impact on existing residents. One other point, it's currently a rural area with a very low density of development. Here the developer is proposing urban densities, completely inappropriate and out of character with the surroundings. And as for the erection of 5-storey blocks of flats on the highest part of the site, well, I don't need to go on about that. Air quality.
You'll have to stop now, Councillor Rich. You've had your 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Councillor Hogger. Councillor Hogger.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I really want to speak on behalf of all of the communities around this site. We have had some discussion about sustainability. This is claimed to be a sustainable community. As various people have said, it isn't. I note that every single parish council around the site has objected, plus residents' associations. And it's really deeply disappointing that a developer like this can come along and clearly have given no thought whatsoever in advance about the impact of such a development on all the surrounding communities. It's not just Ockham, it's Ripley, it's my own ward of Effingham, it's the Horsleys, it's everywhere who would be impacted by what is clearly an unsustainable development. I'm particularly concerned about the traffic infrastructure, as other people have said. The thought of that much traffic on those narrow roads without footways is just horrendous. Anybody who has driven down those narrow roads to reach the A3 and the M25, as we all do from our area, would be absolutely horrified to think that people are being encouraged to cycle along there and adding more traffic to that road. The railway stations, Effingham Junction certainly has no capacity for additional cars. It's jam-packed already, and the same goes for Horsley. I think all members who went on the site visit will probably have been quite convinced that this is not a sensible procedure. I'm also really concerned about this casual assumption right at the beginning that when there was no secondary school proposed, and it was, if you read in depth in the documents, you discovered it was assumed that all of these pupils would go to the Howard of Effingham secondary school. And the thought of all those cars pouring into my village, where we can't cope with the school traffic already, was absolutely horrendous. Well, there is now proposed to be a secondary school. I understand it would be a free school, and as is made clear in the Office of the report, there is no guarantee, no mechanism in place to ensure that's even delivered. So it fails on all of these grounds, and to see the exasperation in the comments from Highways England on the late sheets, I think just says it all. They've had 15 months to get this right, and they are nowhere near. This certainly has to be refused at this committee tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank all the previous speakers and everybody who's emailed me about this, but I haven't got time for that. I note that everybody seems to be agreed that, except for the applicant, that there's an enormous amount of traffic in this area, and from the experience of a site visit, it was untenable to consider putting in more traffic. Another 5,000 cars just doesn't fit. So while most of what I was going to say has already been said, I want to support the refusal wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I also went on the site visit, and I've got a number of concerns. As has been touched on before, the proposed 5-storey buildings along the Spine Road at the highest point of the site, with building heights of 15 metres or above, will be visible from the A3 and further afield. Together with the 3-storey terrace dwellings with front parking shown along Ockham Lane, will be out of keeping, out of character with the rural area and the existing low-density housing. Also, 3-storey buildings in close proximity to Yarn, a Grade 2 listed building, would have an adverse impact. Now, going on the site visit, as it's been alluded to earlier, it's been suggested you could walk or cycle to Effingham Station. However, having travelled the route that has a narrow road, no footpath and no lighting, you would be eligible for a bravery award just for attempting it. It is clearly a non-starter and not possible. Also, there is limited car parking, as has been touched on, at Effingham Station, so it is likely, therefore, with fast trains, that residents from the development would travel to Woking, causing traffic congestion in Ripley, particularly at the junction with Newark Lane. Also, the majority of residents travelling south to the A3 from the site would also add additional traffic through Ripley, adding further to traffic congestion. Now, although the developers have stated they will fund the provision of an enhanced bus service for approximately 12 years and a further 10 years in line with minimal service level agreement, as far as I'm aware, there is no agreement, despite what we've heard tonight from one of the people in support, that they will provide the bus service in perpetuity. We've got nothing in writing to say that. This is important because unless there is a private agreement, the bus provider could stop the service if they feel it is not profitable. So in conclusion, Madam Chairman, I do not believe there are any special circumstances to allow this development, which is inappropriate development in the Green Belt, and I will be supporting refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I've got the media committee here. Councillor Gunning, then Gould, Councillor Jackson, then I'll ask Councillor Cross to sum up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'll start with the fact we have 3,000 on our housing waiting list, and here's a proposal for over 2,000 houses on a derelict airfield. So what's not to like or to approve? Well, first of all, this is not an organically grown community that's being proposed, a village in the usual sense that's arisen from a purpose, like a mining village or a market town or something like that. It's an artificial construct, in my opinion. I am a supporter of more housing and more affordable and social housing, but this particular one, this particular application concerns me, and there's two issues that I would like to raise. One is noise. Now, the A3 is absolutely notorious for the noise that comes from it, and I had a look at some noise maps put together in 2015, and this shows that on either side of the A3, the noise is 65 to 75 decibels in bands which include part of this site. And I certainly wouldn't wish anybody to live in that sort of area. It's all very well to say you can have double glazing and stuff, but it ruins the use of outdoor land. Secondly, I'm not sure about this retail space that's put in, because it says on page 36 that the houses will be built at 170 homes a year. Well, I'm just wondering, because the typical corner shop needs about 2,500 people to be viable, I don't see anybody being willing to set up any kind of retail establishment at that sort of growth rate. And 170 into over 2,000 looks like it'll be 10 years, if it all goes ahead, before any retail establishment is viable on this site. So I'm very happy to support the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I too would like to thank the officers for what I think is an excellent report, and I wholly support it. I do just have one area where I slightly question the officer's conclusion, and that is in relation to the SANG. Because the location of the SANG seems to me to be in a position where it's automatically going to lead people straight into the SPA. And if the purpose of a SANG is to take people away from the SPA, which is my understanding of what it is, surely by creating recreational facilities right next door to it, it's actually going to lead people into it rather than away from it. And I just actually question whether that is a correct conclusion.
Thank you very much. I'll ask the officers to come back and answer that, Paul, for us, or Tim, one of you. Double action.
I think the best thing to say is I fully understand the concerns you raise. I think what I would say is I know for a fact that the applicants have had extensive meetings and discussions with Natural England and gone through a very lengthy exercise, which has resulted in Natural England not objecting to the size of the SANG and its location to SPA. And I'm afraid to say they are the statutory consultee, they are the advisors, and we've been subject to those meetings, and they've resolved the fact that they are satisfied that it works as proposed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Reeve, you did put your hand up very low, but I will allow you to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was going to make the same comment that Councillor Jackson just has, and I note that in our Thames Basin Heath Special Protection Area Avoidance Strategy, our own rules say the provision of a suitable alternative natural green space is to attract people away from the SPA and hence reduce pressure on it, which is interesting given that Natural England didn't seem to do what I think most of us would regard as their job. Interestingly, in the documentation provided by the applicant, I note that they say, and I quote, "The Wisley and Ockham Warden will also coordinate organised dog walking activities to engage the local dog walking community to achieve the desired behavioural changes with regards to recreation both within the SANG and the SPA." If the developer is suggesting that we encourage people to take their pets into the SPA, I think something is seriously adrift. As we know, there are ground nesting birds there, and I think that would the people who wrote the Habitats Directive would have a lot to say about that. Moving to a different point, I see from the documentation that a large amount of material is going to be moved around the site, 470,000 cubic metres in fact, which is a lot. What are they going to do with it? Well, they say that they are going to use some of it in mounds at the northern end of the development to shield from noise from the A3, but a very large proportion of it is going to end up in a tump. It's a word I didn't know before, but it means a large artificial hill. I say large because they quote the size, and it's 1/3 the height of Stag Hill, measured from the surface of the River Wey, which is absolutely enormous. Furthermore, this thing is going to be added to piece by piece as the various phases of the development are put together. And so, since they're going from west to east, I think there's going to be an enormous amount of site traffic just shifting stuff to make this huge hill. Overall, it frankly doesn't meet our policies G1 and G5, which talk about harm to the character of the area. If the 5-storey buildings don't harm the character, then I assure you the Tump will. It's up to 32 metres high. That, I think, Madam Chairman, is everything I wanted to say, because everything else has been said already. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cross, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't think I need delay this committee any longer. I think we can see the writing on the wall. I would say it's very heartening to have gathered the amount of cross-party support that we have tonight, and I'm very grateful to all the members for the backing that I've been shown.
As I say, Councillor Cross, we're not here as party members, we're here as a quasi-judicial committee, so
exactly.
We look at it on planning merits and not anything else, but I'm happy to take your motion on board.
Thank you.
Right, the motion then is to refuse this application. Those in favour, please show. Those against? Any abstentions? This application, therefore, is refused. Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting has not yet concluded. Before formally closing the meeting, ladies and gentlemen, would you be quiet, please? Thank you. Before formally closing the meeting, can I thank all our officers for the hard work on putting this report together, in particular Paul Sherman. Finally, can I remind members to make sure they've signed the attendance register